excited to welcome Peter Desmet, the Open Data Coordinator at the INBO Open Science Lab for Biodiversity. Peter is a champion of open biodiversity data and has played a critical role in shaping GBIF data models, ensuring ecological data sets are structured for maximum accessibility and impact. His expertise in data standards, interoperability, and global collaboration makes him a key voice in bridging biodiversity science with policy. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I'm going to talk a bit about the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, I'm not working for GBIF, but I've worked with GBIF for a long time, how we at INBO are publishing movement data to GBIF, and how GBIF is used for policy. So for those who don't know, GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, main goal is to provide free and open access to biodiversity data. They're an intergovernmental initiative, and they're supported by participating countries and organizations, and that is also how they are funded. GBIF provides access to lots and lots of occurrence data. They have currently over 3 billion occurrence records, and those includes the bulk of that is human observations from citizen science data or monitoring data. But a growing component in there are machine observations through biologging initiative for camera trapping or eDNA. And originally, they started out with lots of specimen data. That is still a big component of GBIF. So data from collections. So those three make up a huge part of the 3 billion occurrence records they have in there. There's also other data that you can publish to GBIF, including species information, which they all aggregate. So all that species information is available per species. And they also keep the original data set that is contributing to this 3 billion occurrence record. So it's not, even though it is one single database where you have all this data, you can still recognize who or what data set was contributing to those data. So how does this work, this occurrence data? So the occurrence data are published as individual data sets. There are currently about 50,000 by different institutions. Currently 2,000 institutions are doing this. But all data needs to be standardized. You cannot just submit your data as is often the case with other repositories like Synodal. You need to standardize your data to Darwin Core, which is a community-maintained standard for expressing biodiversity information. That data is then processed by GBIF, so you publish it somewhere, you register it with GBIF. They link all the scientific name information to a shared taxonomic backbone, so you can actually search for mammals and find all the species are mammal species, even though you only publish the scientific name. And they also flag or check your data for quality issues, as in you reported an occurrence as from a certain country, but the coordinates fall out of that country. All that information is publicly available and accessible through a unified search interface. You can see a screenshot here. So for example, here I can search for muntjac, a kind of deer, records across all these 3 billion records. I want machine observations and human observations. And as you can see on the map, it is a species that is native to China, but it is also occurring as an invasive species in Europe. I'm searching across all these data sets simultaneously. You can use a search interface, but everything that GBIF does is also accessible through an API. They're actually using their own APIs to show the data to you. So if you want a more reproducible way of accessing the data, that is possible. One of the very, very cool features that GBIF has is citation tracking. So every data set that is published to GBIF has a DOI. That's number one in the picture. I have a data set for herring gulls, tracking data. When I publish this to GBIF, they assign a DOI to my data set. So I have a way to uniquely identify my data set, and other people can also cite my data set. But since I'm also able to search across data sets, what you can then do is download the data, and that downloads, which may have data from multiple data sets, also gets a DOI. And that is a DOI where GBIF is making an effort and teaching the community that is a DOI you would cite if you use it in a paper. So you cite the DOI of your downloads, and they then have a mechanism that tracks down okay, we noticed that a paper cited this download, meaning we can increase the citation for every contributing data set to that download. So that is what you see in number 3. That data set currently has 25 citations, meaning it occurred in 25 downloads that were used and cited in a paper. There's currently about 12,000 peer-reviewed papers that have used GBIF data, and this is currently growing at 6 papers per day. So this is going very, very fast. And it is actually incredible as a publisher to GBIF to see your citations increasing and how your data is being used. So if I click that 25 citations, I would be able to see all the papers or policy reports that were using my data. So how do you publish data to GBIF? First, you need to make sure you're part of an institution. And if you're a new publisher institution, if your institution has never published data to GBIF, you need to have an endorsement from a national node, so one of these countries that is contributing to GBIF. This is more of a verification that you're actually a valid institute that can publish data to GBIF. It's a human check. And then you select the tools to publish data to GBIF. You can directly publish by making use of their API to make things more operational or automatic. But the main tool you could use is the IPT, the Integrated Publishing Toolkit, which is a web interface where you can upload your data, write your metadata, and register to GBIF without having to write any codes or have to work with the API yourself. So then the next step is you need to prepare your data because it needs to be standardized as Darwin Core. You need to choose one of the 3 licenses that are supported, CC0, CC Creative Commons Attribution, and Attribution Non-Commercial. And then you can publish your data set. There's lots of support for how to publish data to GBIF. And if you do not want to host your own IPT, it's very probable there's an IPT near you hosted by a larger institution or an institution that already has experience with publishing to GBIF that could host your data set, and you can use their IPT to publish to GBIF. That is what you can see on the map. There's over 350 installations of the IPT, and that data makes it all to GBIF. So more technically, how do you publish data to the IPT or to GBIF? You might have your data in a source database or a source file. You map and standardize this to Darwin Core, and you can upload this to the IPT. And the other thing you can do, the IPT has a web interface where you can describe your data set with metadata. You could also upload that metadata as a standardized file. So both data and metadata are standardized. Data to Darwin Core, metadata as the EML, the ecological metadata language. That comes together in the IPT, and then you publish this as a Darwin Core archive, which is a zipped file containing the CSV data and the metadata. And then you can say, yeah, this can be published, meaning it is publicly available online, but GBIF doesn't know about it yet. That is why it is also necessary to register with GBIF, and that is why you need your endorsement. And then GBIF knows that that dataset exists at this IPT, and they will harvest this and make it part of this large dataset or large database with all the records. The neat thing about this is it also allows you to republish data or dataset with new or updated data. So if you noticed, oh, I made an error in my dataset, you are able to republish that same dataset, and GBIF will harvest the latest version. So they check from time to time if a new version has been published, and they make sure that it makes it to GBIF. So that is how a dataset can also grow and how errors can be corrected. At INBO, my institute, our team is the Open Science Lab for Biodiversity. What we do is we write open software and standards, mainly the software R packages to help people access data or standardize data. And we also publish open data sets. And the ones that are relevant for this call is we have bird GPS tracking data, fish acoustic telemetry data, so tags and fish that are detected by receivers to know, okay, there's a fish that passed by this river or by this receiver here, and also camera traps. We have 18 GPS bird tracking data sets that are published, fish acoustic telemetry 8, and camera traps 2, but the tools we have developed to do that are available for anybody to also help you standardize your data. So to dive a little bit more into the bird GPS tracking data, the way we do this at INBO is we manage our data and metadata in MoveBank, which is a large repository specific for movement data. So that is, we didn't develop our own system to manage that data. We make sure that our data is in MoveBank. And the nice thing with MoveBank is lots of manufacturers have a way to automatically send the data that's collected by a sensor directly to MoveBank. And the only thing you need to manage is the metadata. That allows the orange-pink user there to access that data on MoveBank, which could be collaborators of your project, including you can keep your data private on MoveBank, but you can share with certain users. We want to make sure that our data is also publicly available. So we also deposit our data long-term in Zenodo so that any user can use this data. We do this in the MoveBank data model, so we don't change or standardize the data. It is already following the MoveBank data model. But to make it even more widely available, because on Zenodo and MoveBank that is specific for the movement ecology community, people that are interested will find that data. But there's lots of general occurrence data in there that people will not necessarily find or look at MoveBank for. That is why we also publish that data to MoveBank, to GBIF, and we do that through the IPT. So we standardize this to the Darwin Core Archive and then publish this to GBIF. To do that, we created an R package called MovePub. This was done in a project called Move to GBIF, and it is helping with 3 steps. One, it is helping to document the data set for Zenodo, and it's also helping us to standardize data to Darwin Core and this EML data, so we can just upload those 2 files to the IPT and publish this to GBIF. That is publicly available, so if you have data already in MoveBank and you want to publish this to GBIF, you can use this R package to standardize your data. There's 2 ways this could be improved. I mean, we are a little bit crazy in publishing data, so we do all of this work ourselves, but it would be nicer if you have your data in MoveBank and you say, fine, this data can be open, that this flow is happening automatically by MoveBank, that this data makes it to an open repository and to GBIF automatically. Or the technical and alternative model is MoveBank is publishing it to their repository, and GBIF has a way of understanding the MoveBank data model and is translating it to Darwin Core so they can add it to their database. So there's a difference at where this transformation is happening. We also have fish tracking data, and here I'm just going to say that that data is also managed in something similar to MoveBank called ATN, and we are publishing both the raw data or the standardized ATN data as well as the Darwin Core data, which can then be picked up by GBIF. For camera traps, we have a standard that is accepted by GBIF as a publication format called CamTrapDP. So there you don't need to translate to Darwin Core. If you have it in CamTrapDP, which is supported by many systems, it will make it to GBIF if you publish on an IPT. Now, how is all this data then used for policy? So for INBO, we notice, I mean, we have a direct link with the policy level. So the data that we collect in research projects can help with the conservation of endangered species or do wildlife management or invasive species management. But is there an advantage in having your data as open data on GBIF? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. GBIF is working on different levels that are policy relevant. A major one is GBIF partners with the Convention on Biological Diversity. And one of the frameworks, and the latest one was COP16. It's a conference of the parties. And there it was decided or recommended that the CBD encourages parties to join relevant biodiversity networks such as GBIF. The COP14 in 2020, there they worked on a framework called the Global Biodiversity Framework. That one indicated 23 targets to try to hit, and there's a couple of them that are relevant for GBIF. One is target 6, is to eliminate the impacts of invasive alien species. And invasive species data that make it to GBIF are already currently being used to assess their impact, including by IPBES. There's a forum to see the impact or policy relevant impact, and one of the things is invasive species. There's currently 1.7 thousand papers being used that are using GBIF data on invasive species. Another one of the targets is to enable more transparency to data. And this is, of course, the core of what GBIF is doing. Like all the data to GBIF is open, and it allows people to report also on what they have seen, or institutions to say, this is data we collected. So it's very transparent, the whole flow from collecting data all the way to having public data. GBIF is also contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals related to food and also related to health and climate. There's currently 500 papers using GBIF data that are food related. All of this information you can find on their website at the links that are provided there. And other policy and conservation uses, I mean, there's too many to list. GBIF data has been used to assess the impact for climate change, including by the IPCC, has used papers that are using GBIF data. Another very important one is IUCN Red List assessments. The latest number is that 25,000 assessments are citing GBIF or have used GBIF data. So GBIF is a crucial component for Red List assessments, and GBIF is collaborating with lots of national and international initiatives. But GBIF is a distributed network. I mean, this is what the GBIF Secretariat in Copenhagen is trying to align with. But the GBIF data is open for anybody to use. So there's many other policy relevant cases where GBIF data have been used without the GBIF Secretariat being involved. Also, this would not be scalable for them. So this data that is publicly available, so you can use it for any relevant policy assessments. And at INBO, or in Belgium, one of the projects we have worked with is to build on top of GBIF infrastructure to build new tools that are policy relevant. And one of the tools we have built is an early alert system for invasive species. So we encourage the partners in Belgium to publish data to GBIF, and then we pull that data from GBIF to show a map. Hey, there's new occurrences of invasive species of your interest. You can log into that website and say, oh, I'm interested in these species. Can you send me an email alert if new observations have been seen? That allowed us to have different systems and different partners in Belgium, rather than contributing to yet another database, is to just have them contribute to GBIF and we pull from there, which is useful for us during the timeline of this project, but also long-term, that data makes it to GBIF and can be made use of by any party that is interested in GBIF data. So that's a quick summary of GBIF, how we have published movement data to GBIF, and why it is policy relevant. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. That was a really great overview and I think super helpful. I see that we have one question from the chat. Filippo, do you have a mic that you could jump in to ask your question with?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for your talk. That was super interesting. I had just one very quick question. I'm just getting into the GBIF dataset, and I was wondering whether it's only showing occurrence data or it also has other data modalities, such as images, for example.
It is occurrence data, but image data can be associated with occurrence data. So if you go to the occurrence search and you see your results, you will see a tab there that says gallery, which will show you all the images. So as long as your image is associated with an occurrence, you are able to publish that type of data to GBIF. Do know though that image needs to be hosted somewhere. GBIF is not hosting those images. It's just using the URL to that image to show that image. So yeah, but the pure image data without any associated occurrences, that you cannot publish to GBIF.
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Peter, I had a quick question about your example of the early warning system for invasive species. Is that an example? I think we have an open question right now about how GBIF is interfacing with other platforms that are providing like more derived analyses, so like BON in a box potentially. So is this type of derived analysis, what's the vision for this sort of example, I guess, going forward?
I think it is something I definitely am encouraging for lots of projects to do, as in very often is like, oh, we have data that we want to bring together to build a data set so we can do analysis on all of that together. If you don't mind that that data is open, which is encouraged, then it is nice that you publish your data to GBIF first and then use GBIF infrastructure to build things on top of that for two reasons. One, you don't have to build, I mean, there's lots of infrastructure you don't have to build, like standardizing data, making sure it's all in one infrastructure that you can search on. So you get a lot of things for free. And the other thing is those things are often built within a project, and during the timeline of the project you have funding, but eventually that ends and you have to keep that application online, but eventually it might die. Then all the data doesn't die with it. It's all still available permanently and long-term at GBIF. And also you're putting that data on GBIF for your project, but it's immediately usable for other projects as well. And the other thing you get for free, this is the current infrastructure you have at GBIF, but there's new developments happening too. One of this coming soon is that you can query data on GBIF using SQL. So you can really aggregate the data however you want. That is a feature that you also immediately get for free because you build something on top of GBIF infrastructure and you might be able to use it. So by putting all that data there, it's beneficial to others, but it's hugely beneficial to your own project. So yeah, it's strongly encouraged if you don't mind that the data is public data.
Wonderful.
I have follow-up questions, but I'll let Claudia move on.
I was going to say, yeah, we should move on. But definitely if others have more questions in the chat, maybe Peter, you can look there and help to answer them throughout the rest of the event, and then we'll come back to you for the open discussion. Thank you so much.